Before wealth comes, God shows you these signs. What if the most frustrating, confusing, and painful things happening in your life right now are not obstacles to your wealth, but the exact signs that it's almost here? Pause on that, because here is what nobody tells you about the season right before a major financial breakthrough. It rarely looks like things are getting better. It almost never feels like you're close. In fact, and this is the part that will shake you if you really sit with it, the season immediately before wealth arrives often looks and feels like the opposite of wealth approaching. Things get stripped away, relationships shift unexpectedly. The path you were walking with confidence suddenly loses its clarity. Old sources of income dry up before new ones appear. You feel a restlessness you can't name, a stirring in your spirit that makes you simultaneously excited and terrified without knowing exactly why. Most people see all of that and conclude, something is going wrong. But what if something is going right? What if God, in his meticulous and loving preparation, was showing you signs unmistakable, specific, deeply personal signs that the wealth he's been building toward your life is so close that the atmosphere around you is already beginning to change? This video is going to show you exactly what those signs look like. And I think by the end of it, you're going to look at your current season with completely different eyes. Let me describe something that I believe is happening in your life right now, and tell me if this sounds familiar. You are in a season that doesn't fit neatly into any category. It's not clearly a good season, and it's not clearly a bad one. It's something stranger than either of those. It's an in-between season, a liminal space. A threshold that you've been standing on long enough that you've started to wonder if maybe this threshold is where you live permanently. Things have been shifting around you, but not in ways you can fully read. Some things that were stable have become uncertain. Some relationships have changed in texture, some people have pulled away, others have stepped closer, and the whole landscape of who is in your life feels slightly rearranged from what it was a year ago. Your prayer life has gotten more intense, not less, which is strange because you'd think that someone as tired as you are would have less energy for faith, not more. But something keeps driving you back to those conversations with God. Something keeps you returning to that place of asking and seeking and knocking, even when the door seems to be taking its time. And underneath all of it, there's a feeling you can't quite shake. Not despair, you know what despair feels like, and this isn't quite that. It's something more like standing at the edge of something vast and not being able to see the bottom. Something that feels like it's right on the verge of making sense but hasn't fully resolved into clarity. Yet, that feeling has a name. It's called proximity. The feeling of being very, very close to something that is about to reorganize everything. And the signs I'm about to show you, they're the fingerprints of that proximity. Learn to read them, and the confusion of this season will transform into the most profound kind of confidence. Sign number 1. Things that no longer serve you start falling away without you having to force them. The first sign is one that feels like loss when it's actually liberation. In the season before significant wealth arrives, God begins doing something that feels uncomfortable and sometimes even painful. He starts removing things from your life that would not survive the new season, or that would weigh it down if they came with you into it. This shows up in different ways for different people. For some, it's a job that ends, a source of income that felt stable and suddenly isn't, which feels terrifying until you understand that it was a ceiling, masquerading as a flaw. For others, it's a relationship that falls away, a friendship or a partnership that gradually loses its energy and eventually dissolves, leaving behind a confusing grief mixed with an equally confusing sense of relief. For others, it's a plan, a business idea, a financial strategy, a path forward that you'd been working on carefully that simply stops working and cannot be resuscitated no matter how hard you push. Every one of those removals has a purpose, and purpose is not punishment. Think about what a gardener does before planting something significant. They don't just drop seeds into crowded, unprepared soil and hope for the best. They clear, they remove what doesn't belong. They create space, intentional, deliberate, prepared space for the new thing to have room to root and grow without being choked by what was there before. The clearing in your life right now is gardening, divine gardening, and the fact that God is taking the time to clear, carefully, intentionally, specifically removing exactly what needs to go and leaving what belongs is one of the clearest signs that something significant is about to be planted in the space being created. Don't fight the clearing. Don't try to hold on to what is being removed. Trust the gardener. He knows exactly what the ground needs before the seed goes in. Sign number 2. Your hunger for growth becomes almost impossible to satisfy. Pay close attention to the appetite changes in your spirit right now, because this sign is one of the most reliable precursors to a major financial shift, and most people don't recognize it for what it is. In the season before wealth, there is almost always a surge in hunger. Not physical hunger, spiritual and intellectual hunger. A sudden, almost compulsive need to learn, to grow, to understand things at a deeper level than before. Books you couldn't get through a year ago suddenly feel urgent. Conversations about business, about purpose, about what God is doing in a specific industry or community suddenly feel electric rather than academic. Ideas arrive with an intensity and a frequency that can feel overwhelming. Some people in this season describe it as restlessness. They can't settle. They can't be satisfied with surface-level engagement in any area of life. They keep pressing deeper, reaching further, asking bigger questions than they've ever asked before. This hunger is not random. It is the Spirit's response to the proximity of its assignment. When wealth is approaching, particularly wealth that is meant to be purposeful, that is connected to a larger mission, the Spirit begins preparing itself to operate at the level the new assignment requires. The hunger is the preparation mechanism. It is the soul saying, I need more than I currently have in order to carry what's coming. And the beautiful thing is that every book you read, every conversation you have, every idea you follow in this season is not wasted energy. It is loading into you the knowledge, the perspective and the wisdom that the wealth is going to need you to have when it arrives. Feed the hunger, because the hunger knows something your calendar doesn't yet. Sign number 3. God begins isolating you from certain relationships and environments. This sign is one of the most misunderstood and one of the most significant. In the period before a major financial breakthrough, many people experience a season of what feels like loneliness. Invitations slow down. Friendships that were active become quiet. Social environments that used to feel comfortable start feeling wrong, like wearing a coat that no longer fits. You find yourself wanting to be alone more, wanting silence more, wanting depth in conversations that keep offering you surface. The instinctive response is to worry that something is wrong with you, that you're becoming antisocial or arrogant, or that people don't want to be around you anymore. But there is another interpretation, one that changes everything. God isolates the people he is about to promote, not to punish them with loneliness, but to create the conditions in which the still small voice can be heard clearly. When your life is full of noise, social noise, relational noise, the noise of other people's opinions and energies and agendas, the precise divine instruction that needs to reach you cannot get through the clutter. The isolation is a signal reduction measure. God is turning down the volume on everything that isn't essential so that the communication he needs to have with you, the specific direction, the specific next step, the specific wisdom for the season ahead, can be received without interference. Moses had the wilderness. David had the shepherd's field. Joseph had the prison. In every case, the isolation that looked like abandonment was actually the most intense season of preparation before the most significant season of promotion. Your isolation is not the absence of blessing. It is the anteroom of it. And the quiet that feels uncomfortable is filled with more than you realize if you'll get still enough to hear what it contains. Sign number 4. Old financial mindsets begin to feel visibly wrong. This sign is subtle but enormously significant, and it tends to happen so gradually that people often don't notice it until they look back. Something shifts in the way you think about money. Not dramatically, not like a lightning bolt of new understanding, more like a slow, quiet reordering of what seems true and what seems limited. Beliefs about money that you've carried your whole life, beliefs absorbed from your upbringing, your culture, your family's relationship with wealth, begin to feel hollow, insufficient, like clothes that were the right size once but clearly aren't anymore. The belief that wealthy people are fundamentally different from you that starts feeling obviously false. The belief that money is inherently dangerous or corrupting that starts feeling like a trauma response masquerading as wisdom. The belief that wanting financial abundance is somehow spiritually suspect that starts feeling like a misreading of everything you actually know to be true about a God who created abundance as the original state of his creation. These belief shifts are not accidental. They are God preparing the internal landscape to receive what he's about to release into the external one. Because here is the truth about financial mindsets. What you genuinely, deeply believe about money determines the ceiling of what you can receive and keep. A person who believes at their core that they are not meant to be wealthy will unconsciously sabotage every financial opportunity that approaches that ceiling, not out of self-destruction, but out of alignment with their deepest beliefs. When God is about to break a financial ceiling in your life, he prepares you by breaking the belief that created the ceiling first. And if your relationship with money is shifting, if old stories are falling apart and new ones are forming, that is not confusion. That is renovation. The old ceiling coming down so a new one, a much higher one, can be built. Sign number 5. You begin encountering unusual divine appointments. Start paying attention to the texture of your everyday encounters. Because this sign is happening all around you, and you might be walking past it without fully registering what it is. In the season before wealth, God begins orchestrating what can only be called divine appointments. Encounters with people who seem to arrive in your life with suspicious precision. Conversations that go to unexpected depths with people you've just met. Connections that form quickly and feel significant before you can fully explain why. Being in a specific place at a specific time that turns out to matter enormously, a meeting you almost missed, an event you nearly skipped, a conversation you almost ended early. These moments have a specific quality to them. They feel different from ordinary social interaction. There's an aliveness to them, a sense that something important is being exchanged, even if you can't immediately name what it is. And sometimes the encounter doesn't pay off immediately. Sometimes you meet someone and the connection doesn't reveal its purpose for weeks or months. You file the person away, stay in touch without knowing exactly why your spirit told you to, and then one day the purpose becomes unmistakably clear. God is assembling the network of people that your next season requires. He is making introductions in advance, positioning the right relationships in your orbit before you fully understand what role they'll play. The mentor who will speak at exactly the right moment. The business partner who will carry the piece of the vision you can't carry alone. The investor who will recognize what others have missed. The friend who will walk through the transition with you when others don't understand it. They are already appearing. Are you paying attention? Sign number 6. Your prayer life transforms from asking to knowing. This sign is deeply personal and deeply significant. And it represents one of the most profound internal shifts that happens before major financial favor arrives. There is a quality of prayer that is characterized by desperation. The prayer of someone who doesn't know if they're being heard. The prayer that is equal parts communication and performance, performed for the God you're not entirely sure is listening with an intensity that you hope will demonstrate the seriousness of your need. This prayer is real, and it is valid, and God honors it. But it is the prayer of distance. And then something changes, not all at once. Gradually, in the middle of a season, you're still living through something in the quality of your prayer shifts. The desperation becomes less frantic. The asking becomes more conversational. The performance drops away, and what's left is something rawer and truer, an actual exchange between a person and the God who knows them completely. And in that exchange, something new begins to arrive. Not just comfort, though there is comfort, but a quality of inner knowing that doesn't depend on external circumstances for its stability. A settled sense of it is done about things that have not yet manifested. A peace that your logical mind cannot fully explain given the situation you're still in. This shift from asking to knowing is one of the clearest signs in the spiritual realm that the answer to what you've been praying for has already been dispatched. The knowing is the Spirit's receipt, the confirmation that something real has happened in the invisible realm that the visible world hasn't yet had time to reflect. If your prayer life has been changing in this direction, if you're finding yourself less frantic and more settled, less desperate and more assured, even though nothing external has yet changed, pay close attention. That shift is one of the most reliable harbingers of a coming financial breakthrough that exists. Sign number 7. You are being stretched beyond your comfort zone constantly. The season before wealth is, among other things, an aggressive expansion season. And expansion is inherently uncomfortable. You may have noticed that life is demanding more of you lately than it typically does. More courage in conversations you'd rather avoid. More faith in situations where the logical response would be fear. More action in domains where your instinct is to wait until you feel more ready. More vulnerability in relationships where your pattern has been to stay behind protective walls. This demand for more, this constant stretching beyond where you're comfortable, is not God being harsh. It is God being strategic. The person who will manage and steward the wealth coming into your life needs to be operating at a larger capacity than the person you are today. Not a completely different person, but an expanded one. Someone whose comfort zone has been stretched to include things that currently make you anxious. Someone whose faith muscle has been exercised to the point where it can handle the weight of the decisions that significant wealth requires. Someone who has practiced the courage, the vulnerability, and the boundary setting that navigating financial abundance with integrity demands. Every uncomfortable moment you push through right now is not just surviving the present. It is building the capacity for the future. And the specific discomforts God is asking you to push through are precisely calibrated to develop the exact capacities your next season will require. Don't retreat to comfort when the stretching begins. The stretching is the sign. And what's being stretched is not your patience, it's your capacity for the life that's coming. Sign number 8. A deep, unexplainable peace settles over your spirit about the future. This sign contradicts everything else that's happening externally, and that contradiction is actually what makes it so significant. In the middle of a season that still has genuine financial uncertainty, in the middle of circumstances that, objectively examined, have not yet resolved, in the middle of a life that still contains real unanswered questions and real unmet needs, a peace arrives. Not the peace of denial, not the numbness that comes from giving up hope. Something completely different, a warm, settled, deeply rooted sense that everything is going to be okay. Not just okay, in a vague, generic sense. Specifically okay, purposefully okay. Okay in a way that includes the financial breakthrough, the relational healing, the sense of purpose and meaning and contribution that your deepest self has always been reaching toward. This peace doesn't make logical sense given the circumstances, which is precisely what makes it supernatural rather than psychological. The Bible calls it a peace that passes understanding, and the word passes is interesting. It doesn't just mean a peace that is greater than understanding. It means a peace that moves beyond the reach of understanding, that exists in a place where logic simply cannot follow it and therefore cannot argue with it. When that peace arrives, when you find yourself genuinely calm about a future that your circumstances still suggest should frighten you, something has happened in the spiritual realm that has not yet appeared in the natural one. The wealth is so close that its peace has arrived ahead of it, and peace that arrives before the provision is one of the oldest signs in the human spiritual experience that the provision is already on its way. Sign number 9. You develop a burning clarity about your purpose in the weeks and months before a major financial breakthrough. Something happens in the domain of purpose and calling that is unmistakable once you know what to look for. The fog lifts, or rather it begins to lift, slowly then all at once. The vague sense of calling that you've carried for years starts sharpening into something specific. The general feeling that you're meant to do something significant with your life starts resolving into actual clarity about what that something is. The restless searching for your lane, which has felt like wandering for so long, begins to feel like arriving. This clarity matters enormously for understanding the financial shift that's coming, because purpose and provision are directly connected in God's economy. The reason the wealth is coming is because there is a specific purpose it is meant to fund. And God doesn't generally release the provision until the person who is meant to carry it has enough clarity about the purpose to steward it toward the right mission. The clarity is the green light, when you can articulate clearly, specifically, passionately what the financial blessing is for. You have demonstrated to yourself and to heaven that you are ready for it to arrive. So if you have been experiencing a sharpening of purpose, lately, if the calling that was fuzzy is getting clearer, if the mission that was vague is becoming specific, if you're beginning to understand not just what you want to do, but why it matters at a core level beyond your own comfort, that clarity is not separate from the wealth that's coming. It is the compass the wealth is following to find you. Sign number 10. You feel simultaneously unqualified and absolutely certain. The final sign is the most paradoxical and for that reason the most unmistakable. In the season right before God promotes someone to a significantly higher financial level, that person almost always experiences a very specific internal contradiction. On one side, a profound sense of inadequacy, a clear, honest awareness of every gap in their knowledge, every imperfection in their character, every place where they feel they fall short of who the next season seems to require them to be. On the other side, an equally profound, equally unshakable certainty that it's theirs. Anyway, that despite every legitimate reason for doubt, despite every honest acknowledgement of limitation, this is their time. This is their season. What's coming is for them, not for someone more qualified, not for a future version of themselves that has everything figured out, but for this version, right now, exactly as they are. That contradiction, the simultaneous awareness of inadequacy and certainty, is one of the purest signs of divine calling that exists. Because the confidence that comes from human qualification is logical. You know you're qualified, therefore you feel ready. But the confidence that comes from divine appointment is different. It is confidence that coexists with honest humility. It is certainty that doesn't require you to pretend you have it all together. It is a knowing that stands in spite of the limitations you can clearly see in yourself, not because those limitations aren't real, but because you've somehow come to understand that God's choice of you was never contingent on their absence. If you feel that paradox right now, if you are simultaneously more aware of your inadequacy and more certain of your calling than you've ever been, you are standing exactly where the chosen ones stand before everything changes. That is not confusion. That is clarity of the highest order. And what it's clarifying is that you are right on the edge of the most significant financial season of your life. Every sign I described today, the clearing, the hunger, the isolation, the mindset shift, the divine appointments, the prayer transformation, the stretching, the unexplainable peace, the purpose clarity, the paradox of inadequacy and certainty, every single one of those is a communication. God is not a distant, silent, indifferent force who moves through the universe without regard for the specific details of your specific life. He is a communicator, a preparer, a God who loves you too much to send the wealth without first sending the signs, without first doing the work in you that makes you capable of receiving the wealth without it destroying you. The signs are not guarantees of an easy road. They are not a promise that the transition will be painless or perfectly timed according to your schedule, but they are evidence, real, specific, personal evidence that what is coming is being prepared with the same care and intentionality with which you have been being prepared to receive it. And that evidence deserves a response, not a passive response, not just a feeling of relief or a moment of emotional resonance that fades by tomorrow morning. A decision, a concrete, committed, this is real, and I'm going to act like it decision that the signs mean what they mean and the season is what it is, and the wealth that God has been building toward your life is close enough to prepare for practically. So prepare, not out of anxiety, out of faith made active. Revisit the spiritual homework, strengthen the habits that the new season will require. Lean into the clarity that's been forming about your purpose. Stay alert to the divine appointments. Feed the hunger with the right things. Hold the peace without trying to explain it. And trust deeply, stubbornly. Even on the days when the external circumstances make trusting feel almost irrational, that the God who showed you the signs is the same God who sends the wealth that follows them. He showed you the signs because something real is coming. Now live like you believe. That, if today's video gave you language for what you've been experiencing, if the signs I described felt less like content and more like confirmation, please subscribe to this channel right now and share this with someone who is in the middle of their own preparation season. Every week, we come here to speak truth to the people who are close to their breakthrough, but can't always see it from where they're standing. You found this channel for a reason. Stay, subscribe, turn on notifications. God bless you. The signs are real. The wealth is coming. and you were not brought this far to be left here.